Today we're talking about Jesse Lee Peterson. For those of you who don't know Jesse Lee Peterson, he's a Southern black man who claims or says that he grew up in the time of Jim Crow, okay? And his claim to fame currently is 2 to 3 stances in life. One, he believes that the United States of America is the greatest piece of land or the greatest operating country on this side of heaven. The second thing is, even though most people think it's a part of his comedic approach to the thing, he found it was called White History Month, which is July, because he believes that just like blacks have their Black History Month, whites should have their month. I think that's hilarious. But I also think that there's a method to his madness. And the next biggest thing he says on a regular basis after doing, a little research, poking around and looking at a couple of his videos, he makes a point that, for one, blacks have no morals. 2, blacks have turned their back on God and don't believe in God. And 3, blacks choose evil over good. All right? Now, there's a lot of Jesse Lee Peterson hate going on. There's a lot of impressionable young people out here, especially our young men. So I want to get to a point of sharing with you what it is that I think Jesse Lee Peterson's overall point is, which he's told you, so you shouldn't be trying to figure it out. But don't hate the man. What you need to do is grow up and know your source, okay? Now, Jesse Lee Peterson, he speaks with a little lisp or whatever, but he still made something of himself to the point where I don't know how many followers he has, but he's been on YouTube for a while. He's created an organization called Bond. I think it's like Brothers On to a New Destiny or something like that. So the first thing, as a black person, brown, whatever you want to call it in today's society, black or brown, whatever. If he's created an organization to actually help rebuild black men and you haven't, then that's one strike against you. Because we're all sitting in an environment where we see how our black men function in this society. So if he's doing anything to assist in helping the black man redeem himself, have discipline, think better of himself, and if he's trying to help aid rebuild the family, what actually can you say bad about that?
Question to you was about policy. So let me ask you, what in the policy of the George Floyd Policing Act do you disagree with?
The whole idea, which really
part of the policy, Jesse?
Blaming the cops and no responsibility
Jesse,
for the blacks.
I'm asking you, what part of the policy is written? You can find it at congress.gov. What part of the policy, sir, do you disagree with? This is a simple question.
I disagree with the whole idea of a policy.
You haven't read the policy. You haven't even read the damn policy. Come on, Jesse.
I don't need to read it. I don't need to read it to know the truth, because what I've noticed is that black people today, due to their lack of love, their lack of believing in God, they love evil more than they love good, right?
So that's the reason why you don't read.
And so
that's the reason why you don't read.
Right, because it was written by no good black people. And why should I waste my time knowing what they're about? Black folks today, and not all, but most, have no sense of direction. They're blaming everybody but themselves. And until they take responsibility for their own lives, they are not going to get better. The real truth is,
let me ask
George Floyd is dead because of George Floyd and no one else.
That's a ridiculous point. But do you blame yourself for not reading the policy, or you blame somebody else?
Why should I read the policy when I already know the people?
You don't even know what's in the policy, do you?
I don't need to know, don't want to know. I know the people who are writing it, they are no good.
Okay, let's talk about Black Lives Matter. This is probably going to end up being an utter waste of my time having you on the show. What are your thoughts about Black Lives Matter?
You don't know that. You may learn something.
Well, we'll see, preacher. What is it about Black Lives Matter that you disagree with fundamentally?
Black Lives Matter was founded by a bunch of fat, black, radical lesbians.
Okay.
And who
All
hate
right, have
God.
a good night. Get this clown off my show. I appreciate you.
Think about this. Do you watch the news at all? Do you watch YouTube? Have you watched CNN? Have you watched USA Today? Have you watched WGN, ABC, NBC, Fox News? If you've seen any of this, or if you just regularly tune in to YouTube, then you would have seen how Negroes act. They're like, niggas is like Tasmanian devils out here, right? But if you say it, especially as a black person, you're absolutely out of pocket. See, in this world, we have to figure out who's black and who's a nigga. You know, Chris Rock had a whole stand-up special about it. It's one of his best stand-up specials. At the end of the day, we have to find out, just like whites, black people have to do the same thing. We got to figure out who's a nigga and who's an actual black person, okay? But my point to that is that if you watch the news or if you watch YouTube, then that means you've heard of cities like Chicago, Atlanta, Philly, New York City and all its beautiful boroughs, LA, can I go on? Anywhere in America that's densely populated with blacks or democratically ran cities, they seem to have an issue with extra violence, fatherless homes, absorbing and spending in areas that are not education and fulfillment, may have a low income issue as well as homelessness. And the list goes on, like mental health and all of this other stuff that black people deal with that they never get assistance for. Understood, some services have been taken. But for Jesse Lee Peterson, his overall point is, if you point the finger at yourself instead of the world, you'll probably see in the mirror who the problem is. Black people don't, as a whole, don't want to hear that shit. Don't tell me I'm the problem at all. I should be able to be an idiot 24 hours a day and get the best results, okay? I haven't heard him rape anybody, commit murder, or anything. So if you're upset with his words, that's on you. So black people hate the truth. Overall, we hate the truth. That shit is like an elixir. It's not a fixer, all right? It's like Dr. Tishner's. We don't like it. And I seem to notice that over the course of my life, I've never heard a black person ask, why would a group of people, if I think they hate me this much, why do they hate me this much? Is there anything that our people did to those people back in the past? Oh, well, no. That can't be it. Because first of all, I don't care. Second of all, I'm not going to go look. So let's not even bring that up, because going back into our history and knowing who we are, no. That's not what I'm going to do. So since we're not going to do that, I would ask that you go to Mr. Jesse Lee Peterson's website to see the type of people he's talked to. Go to his YouTube page or whatever. He's had some characters on his show. He's interviewed some characters, from gay preachers to demon preachers to feminists to just idiots. And he's grinning, bared it, said what he's had to say, stood his ground, laughed at a lot of it. But at the end of the day, he's gone through a full gambit of the way black people have turned away from God and that they have low morals. The other thing is, Jesse Lee Peterson, like most black males who say anything outside of regular black people discourse of victimhood, then you're gonna be considered gay at some point, all right? So for the Jesse Lee Petersons, the Kevin Samuels, for the Tommy Sotomayor, or maybe the O'Shea Duke Jackson, and the list probably goes on and on and on, they're all gonna be gay because they're saying something about black people standing up to other races as though we're not victims, that we're not retarded, that we are people who can actually get up and get our own. We don't need to make excuses for the reason why we haven't done something in the last 100 years, right? I digress. I've talked to one of my white homies, right? And he used to always ask me questions about black people and their thought process, and I couldn't get offended because he wasn't a traditional white dude. He was more conservative, but he was cool as hell to me. one of my best homies. So we can go back and forth with each other about white and black and blah, 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 but we didn't stick on that shit. It was just things that we noticed that we had questions about that we could verify by both being a part of that culture, right? So he would always ask me one thing, and I thought it was funny. He was like, let me ask you something. When black people get upset with other black people, I notice they call each other names. They throw a lot of innuendos around. But the biggest thing is I notice black women mostly, they like to call black men gay a lot. And it's basically about anything that they disagree with. And I'm like, true. You know, there's some niggas that was raised primarily by women or think like women, they do the same thing. All right. The first thing they do is call you gay when you say something that they don't like. It's not that you're a liar, but you're gay for saying something truthful. So this is the way it goes. I have to explain it to him, right? But the first thing is, before you get gay, it's just a total disdain for our elders. That's one of the things that he talked about. He was like, another thing is, why is it that black people, men and women across the board, it seems like they hate old people. Like they have this mass disrespect for their elders. You know what I'm saying? You got OGs and you got elders. An OG tells you about bullshit he did. And if you want to do that, this is how he circumvented the situation. An elder gives you information about not getting into that situation that the OG got in at all in your life, making better decisions. So, first of all, we got to get past this disrespect for our elders. It's totally out of hand. But again, I'm going to be gay for saying that. Bet it up. The next thing is, he caught us red-handed, right? The first thing he was like is, hey, you guys call each other gay a lot. Black people call each other gay. Okay, right? So he says, most black people in the United States, because of the slave story that was told, none of them think they're indigenous for the most part. All right, only those who know something about the definition of the word indigenous actually believe that. But he's like, hey, most black people identify with being African, right? All right, so they identify with being African, which is why they have no problem being called African Americans, right? But the moment that you say something to them as a black person that they don't like, they're gonna call you gay, right? That's the first thing that they run to. So if black people identify themselves with being African, right? But the first time a person makes you upset with words, you call them gay. The next thing he says, tell me what African nation actually embraces homosexuality, right? Because as we should know, Africa is a continent and had 54 countries in it, right? He's like, that's retarded to me. One, you guys identify with being African. Two, the first mudslinging that you do when you're upset with the truth someone else is telling is that they're gay. But three, there is no African nation that embraces gays and lesbians. Actually, like my man Corey used to tell me about Gunna, you would get your ass beat coming over there with that shit. Because Africans, that's not a part of our culture if you're African. So I could see how that could be quite confusing for a Caucasian, not understanding that, first off, African culture is not based in homosexuality. Never has been, never will be. You would have to leave your culture to go to a westernized society if you wanted to live that type of alternative lifestyle. So he can't understand it. I can't understand it either. And I told him that. But there's no answer I could have for him because he was right. Black, that is retarded. For you to say that you're African, but then you're going to tell one of your African sisters or brothers because they said or spoke a truth that you are gay. That's your first base or the base level of your insult is you're gay. Yet Africans, true Africans, do not identify at all. That is a major offense to them. I digress. All right. So to wrap it up, for people who identify with slaves from Africa, regardless of the indigenous people that were on U.S. American soil, right? Then you add black spending habits, black voting habits, black eating habits, and their overall attitude, disdain, and disrespect for each other. As a whole group, we look like a joke. At the end of the day, gonna continually look like a joke, because to some black people, we look like a joke, which is why they want to separate from niggas. Black people have long wanted to separate from niggas, but that's where the Bible says God will separate the wheat from the tare. So this goes back to what one of my lieutenants told me when I was in the military. And I had to take it. And he said that, listen, blacks and whites have a difference in their lifestyles. He said black people live a circular life. White people live a linear life. Basically, he's saying black people live a circular life. They make the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. Okay? And then if you could put it out in the middle of that, that's basically saying they're making the same mistakes over and over again. And then they point the finger at somebody else. So it's a hole on 79th Street. I'm going to drive from 71st to 79th every day into that hole. But I'm going to blame community leaders, the president. I'm going to blame my alderman. I'm going to blame police. I'm going to try to find someone to attach the blame to. But it's never going to be me, because I'm a victim. The way in America that black people spend money on fruitless things, on the way they vote, extremely one-sided for Democrats who, for years, have been poking fun at you publicly, but you don't get it. For the eating habits, I could care less about what other races do. I'm talking to my people. But as soon as you say what black people do, what's the first line of defense? Oh, but they do it. Retarded. As a group, we look like a joke, okay? Because you got one side of us who kind of understand things, but that side either tries to explain it to the other side who doesn't want to get it. So in every group, you got a third. I believe that's why the Bible says that 1/3 God will be taken back with him into heaven. If you split every group of people up into thirds, you got people in the middle, you got people on the left, and you got people on the right. The left will say people that ain't trying. We call them niggas. They want to be that. You got people in the middle who either came from being a nigga, or they have to defend niggas because they got niggas in their family. They created niggas in this world. And then you got people on the right who are against niggas and who can't understand why the people in the middle can't just come to the right and get away from them niggas. Because you can't muddle the two thoughts. You have to either be one or the other. You can't be a black person on Monday and a nigga on Tuesday. Then your life is like going in a circular motion. As a group, black folks, to close this out, we're kind of looking like a joke here. You're trying to attack your people. You go online, black people attack black people more than any other group of people. That's that Tasmanian devil in you. You can't help ourselves. We have to attack each other. We don't like people benefiting when they're telling the truth about our bullshit. That's just who we are as a people. America as a whole, when we're talking about America, other races are finding out just how retarded blacks are. So most of the time, you're discredited just based off how you look. Let me show you this. Just like blacks do, when you go somewhere and people see you, they're already trying to figure out which one you are. That's how they can be comfortable with you. I'm a truck driver. I've been everywhere, the small towns in Oklahoma, North Dakota, Idaho. It doesn't really matter. I haven't had any issues with Caucasians in none of these small towns. Not one, which is amazing to me. I've had to sleep overnight in a truck alone. If my truck ever went down, guess who was the first person to pull over? If anybody did, it was always a white male. Negroes drive past you like they don't see you at all. They don't lend assistance. But that's just my life. That's not everybody else's. I know other people have different experiences. Cool. That's my experience. And what I'm telling you is, at the end of the day, back to Jesse Lee Peterson. Know your source. He's an older black male from the South. He grew up in Jim Crow. If he's not complaining about the white man back in those times, it's 2021. Why should you? Jesse Lee Peterson is not the problem. I'm quite sure when you look up at some age in your life, you'll look in that thing called the mirror and find out the problem is you.